1 in 5 Americans who bought a new car last year signed up for a monthly payment exceeding $1,000. Let that sink in. $1,000 every single month for a vehicle. The average new car payment has climbed to $772 per month. Used cars aren't far behind at $570. More than 22% of buyers are now stretching their loans to 84 months. 7 full years of payments on a machine that starts losing value the moment they drive it home. Americans collectively owe $1.67 trillion in auto loan debt. That number is so large it has surpassed total student loan debt in this country. Auto loans now represent the second largest category of consumer debt behind mortgages, accounting for nearly 9% of everything Americans owe. Over 100 million people are currently making car payments, and almost everyone treats this as completely normal. Your parents had car payments, your coworkers have car payments, your friends scroll Instagram from the driver's seat of financed vehicles. The assumption runs so deep that questioning it feels almost strange, like asking why people wear shoes or use refrigerators. Car payments have become the background noise of American financial life. Nobody questions them because everybody has them. Here's what nobody tells you. This normal behavior is quietly devastating the financial futures of millions of people. The car payment has become one of the most normalized, wealth-destroying decisions in America, hiding in plain sight because it looks exactly like what everyone else is doing. Let me show you what's actually happening. The average price of a new car in America has crossed $49,000. That figure would have seemed absurd a decade ago. Today, it barely raises eyebrows because the conversation never focuses on the total price. Dealerships have perfected the art of redirecting attention to a single number, the monthly payment. Walk into any dealership and notice what happens. The salesperson doesn't ask what you can afford to spend on a car. They ask what monthly payment fits your budget. This framing shift isn't accidental. It's the psychological foundation of an entire industry. When you focus on the payment, something strange happens to your brain. The total cost fades into abstraction. $49,000 triggers alarm bells. $772 per month feels manageable. Uncomfortable maybe, but survivable. This is why financing has become the primary profit center for most dealerships. The markup on the vehicle itself represents pocket change compared to what lenders collect over 5, 6, or 7 years of payments. Interest compounds, fees accumulate. The true cost of that car expands far beyond the sticker price, but you never feel the full weight because it arrives in monthly installments instead of one crushing sum. If you had to hand someone $49,000 in cash, you would think very differently about the purchase. You would scrutinize every feature, question every add-on, consider whether you actually needed this particular vehicle. Cash makes people careful. Payments make people comfortable spending money they don't have. The same psychology drives credit card debt. Swiping feels painless. Handing over physical currency does not. The car payment system exploits this cognitive gap at industrial scale, extracting wealth from families who never consciously chose to transfer it. But the monthly payment is just the beginning. Consider what happens the moment you drive a new car off the lot. The vehicle loses roughly 10% of its value before you reach the first traffic light. Within 12 months, that depreciation climbs to 20%. After 5 years, the average car has shed 60% of its original purchase price. You bought a $49,000 asset. 5 years later, it's worth roughly $20,000. But here's the trap. Your loan balance doesn't depreciate. Your payment stays the same whether the car is worth $49,000 or $20,000. You're paying the same amount each month on something worth less and less. This creates a phenomenon called negative equity, owing more on the car than it's actually worth, and it has reached crisis levels. In the fourth quarter of 2025, 29.3% of trade-ins toward new vehicles had negative equity. Nearly 1 in 3 people trying to replace their car owed more than the car was worth. The average amount of that negative equity hit an all-time high of $7,214. Think about what that means practically. You want to get out of your current car. Maybe it needs repairs. Maybe you need something bigger for a growing family. Maybe you're just tired of the payment. You bring it to the dealership expecting to trade it in. The dealer tells you the car is worth $18,000. You still owe $25,000 on the loan. That $7,000 gap doesn't disappear. It gets rolled into your next loan. Now you're financing a new car, plus the leftover debt from the old one. Your monthly payment climbs higher, your loan term stretches longer, the cycle deepens. More than a quarter of underwater trade-ins now carry five-figure negative equity, over $10,000 owed beyond the car's value. Some people show up at dealerships buried under $15,000 or more before even looking at a new vehicle. These aren't irresponsible people making reckless decisions. They're regular people caught in a system designed to keep them perpetually indebted. Buyers who roll negative equity into new loans pay an average of $916 per month, $144 more than the industry average. They finance more than $11,000 beyond what typical buyers borrow. To make those inflated payments feel manageable, many stretch their loans to 7 years. Longer loans mean slower equity building. Slower equity building means higher odds of being underwater again when the next trade-in comes. The pattern becomes self-perpetuating. Nearly 41% of new vehicle purchases involving negative equity are financed with 84-month loans. This is how people end up making car payments for their entire adult lives. Not because they chose permanent indebtedness, but because each short-term decision creates conditions that make the next loan larger, longer, and harder to escape. Let me break down the math that nobody shows you at the dealership. Say you buy a new car for $49,000. You put down $4,000 and finance $45,000 at 7% interest over 72 months. Your payment comes to roughly $770 per month. Over 6 years, you'll pay approximately $55,400 total. Interest alone adds more than $10,000 to the cost of the car. Meanwhile, the car itself is depreciating. By year 3, it might be worth $28,000. You still owe around $25,000 on the loan. You're barely at break-even equity after 3 years of payments. By year 5, the car is worth maybe $20,000. You owe about $10,000. Finally, you have positive equity. But you've been making $770 payments every single month for 5 years. $46,200 in total payments. And your net equity position is $10,000. You transferred $46,200 out of your household. You received $10,000 in equity. The rest evaporated into interest payments and depreciation. Multiply this pattern across a lifetime of vehicle ownership. Someone who finances cars continuously from age 25 to 65 will make 4 decades of payments. At $700 per month average, that's $8,400 per year, $336,000 over 40 years, not counting interest rate variations or inflation adjustments. $336,000 flowing out of your household for transportation. If that same $700 monthly went into an index fund averaging 8% returns, it would grow to over $2.3 million across 4 decades. The car payment doesn't just cost you the payment, it costs you everything that money could have become. Now consider what the payment actually buys beyond transportation. Insurance costs climb with vehicle value. A $49,000 car costs dramatically more to insure than a $15,000 car. Registration fees scale with purchase price in many states. Repairs on newer, more complex vehicles often require specialized equipment and dealer service rates. The car payment is a cover charge. It gets you in the door. The real expenses stack on top. When you finance a car, you're also financing a lifestyle tier that demands additional spending at every turn. The $800 monthly payment comes with $250 monthly insurance, $400 monthly in combined fuel and maintenance, registration and taxes spread across the year. Your total transportation cost approaches $1,500 monthly, $18,000 annually, for the privilege of driving to work. Some families spend more on car payments than they do on food, and they think this is normal because everyone around them does the same thing. Here's what actually happens to people with car payments. They budget, they try to save, they even invest a little bit when there's money left over, but they never seem to get ahead. Every month, $700 or $800 or $900 vanishes from their checking account before they can apply it to anything that might improve their long-term position. They make decent incomes, not minimum wage, genuinely good salaries, and still feel broke by the 25th of every month. They wonder what they're doing wrong. They try cutting streaming services and restaurant spending. They clip coupons and hunt for sales. Meanwhile, the car payment sits there untouched, unquestioned, treated as fixed and unavoidable as rent or property taxes. The payment isn't just extracting money, it's preventing wealth accumulation. Every dollar going to the car payment is a dollar not going to emergency savings, retirement accounts, or paying down higher interest debt. The opportunity cost compounds invisibly across decades. People reach their 50s having made 30 years of car payments and wonder why their retirement accounts look thin. The answer has been sitting in their driveway the entire time. But here's the aspect of car payments that almost never gets discussed. Financing a vehicle changes how you think about money in ways that extend far beyond transportation. When you commit to a $700 monthly payment, you're not just buying a car. You're training yourself to accept debt as a normal state of being. You're establishing a pattern where borrowing money for depreciating assets feels routine rather than alarming. This mentality bleeds into other decisions. If car payments are normal, why wouldn't furniture payments be normal? If 84-month loans are acceptable for vehicles, maybe 60-month financing makes sense for a kitchen renovation. The debt acceptance muscle strengthens with each exercise. Meanwhile, the discipline required to save cash for major purchases atrophies from disuse. People who pay cash for cars think differently than people who finance. Cash buyers evaluate the total cost because they feel every dollar leaving their account. They compare the $15,000 car to the $25,000 car based on actual value delivered, not which payment feels more comfortable. They develop patience, saving for months or years before making a purchase, rather than demanding instant gratification. Financing short-circuits this entire psychological development. You get the car today and figure out the payment later. The habit of wanting now, paying later becomes default operating procedure, applied eventually to purchases far less justifiable than transportation. Some people genuinely believe they cannot exist without a car payment. The idea of buying a vehicle with cash seems like a fantasy reserved for the wealthy, but this belief often reflects conditioned thinking more than financial reality. The average car payment for a used vehicle runs $570 monthly. Someone paying that amount for 3 years transfers over $20,000 to lenders. If that same person drove their current car for 3 more years while banking $500 monthly, they'd have $18,000 cash for a reliable used vehicle. The math works for most people who believe it doesn't. The obstacle isn't income. It's the assumption that payments are inevitable. Let me offer a concrete path out. Step 1. Drive your current vehicle longer than you think you should. Maintenance and repairs on a paid-off car almost always cost less than payments on a newer one. The average American trades in cars after just 3.7 years, often before the vehicle has any mechanical issues that would actually justify replacement. Keep driving it. Step 2. Bank what you would have paid. If you were making $600 monthly payments before the car was paid off, continue making payments, but to a savings account you control. In 18 months, you'll have $10,800. In 3 years, $21,600. Step 3. Buy your next car with cash for whatever amount you've saved. Yes, it will be older than the financed alternative. Yes, it will have more miles, but it will be yours entirely. No payment, no interest, no lender holding title. Step 4. Repeat the saving pattern. After purchasing the cash car, continue banking $400 or $500 monthly toward the next one. Each cycle, your saved amount grows larger, while the new car gets slightly newer and nicer. Within 10 years, someone following this pattern can be driving a solid $15,000 to $20,000 vehicle purchased outright, with another $10,000 in savings earmarked for the subsequent car. They've escaped the payment cycle entirely. The objection I hear most often involves reliability. People say they need a newer car because they want something safe and dependable. They associate newer with reliable and older with breakdown. This assumption doesn't match reality for most vehicles. A well-maintained 8-year-old Toyota or Honda runs just as reliably as a brand new equivalent. The depreciation has already happened. The bugs in that model year have been identified and addressed. You're buying proven performance rather than paying a premium for newness. Mechanics understand this intuitively. Walk through any shop parking lot and count the late model financed vehicles versus the older paid off ones. Mechanics know how to evaluate what actually matters in a car: maintenance history, build quality, Common failure points. They're not impressed by new car smell or fresh paint. They drive older vehicles that run perfectly because they understand the machinery. A little knowledge about cars transforms the buying decision entirely. You stop evaluating vehicles based on monthly payment and start evaluating them based on cost per mile of reliable transportation. Suddenly, the 12-year-old Civic with documented service history looks better than the 2-year-old sedan with a 7-year loan attached. What about leasing? Some people view leases as a smarter approach because monthly payments run lower, and you're always driving something new. Leasing is renting a car you can never own. When you lease, you're paying for the vehicle's depreciation during the years you drive it, typically its steepest depreciation years. You face mileage restrictions. You get charged for any wear beyond the ordinary. At the end of the lease term, you hand back the keys and have built exactly zero equity. Then you lease another one, and another. The payments continue indefinitely. At least loan payments eventually end. Leases just restart every 2 or 3 years. You're subscribing to a car rather than owning one, paying perpetually for access without accumulating any value. Leasing makes sense for businesses that can deduct the expense. For people who genuinely need a new vehicle every few years for professional reasons, or for those who have so much wealth that the math simply doesn't matter. For everyone else, it's the most expensive way to drive a car over a lifetime. If you wouldn't walk into Enterprise and rent a car for 3 straight years, you probably shouldn't lease one either. Let me address the emotional dimension directly. Cars are identity objects. They signal success, taste, membership in particular tribes. Pulling into the parking lot in a certain vehicle says something about who you are, or at least who you want people to believe you are. This isn't shallow or stupid. Humans are social creatures. Status signals matter in ways that affect real-world outcomes, from job prospects to dating to how strangers treat you in public spaces. But financing identity is extraordinarily expensive. You're borrowing money to project an image, paying interest on a perception, making monthly payments on other people's opinions. The $800 car payment isn't buying transportation. It's buying the feeling of being seen a certain way. Some people keep making car payments because the alternative, driving a paid-off older vehicle, feels like visible evidence of financial limitation. They'd rather be privately broke and publicly successful than publicly modest and privately building wealth. This trade-off works exactly backward. The quiet path to wealth involves looking less impressive than you could while systematically building assets. The loud path to financial fragility involves looking as impressive as possible while systematically depleting them. Nobody knows your net worth by looking at your car, but your car payment knows your priorities. Consider 2 people earning identical salaries. Person A finances a new car every 5 years, maintaining continuous payments averaging $700 monthly across their working life. Person B drives paid-off vehicles purchased with cash, never making payments after their initial transition period. Assuming identical salaries and living costs, Person B banks roughly $8,400 more annually than Person A. Invested across a career, that difference compounds into hundreds of thousands of dollars. At retirement, Person A has driven nicer cars. Person B has accumulated substantial additional wealth. One person optimized for appearance during their earning years. The other optimized for financial freedom in their later years. Both made choices. Neither is morally superior, but only one is actually financially rational, and it's not the choice our culture normalizes. The pressure to make payments comes from everywhere. Auto advertising spends billions annually normalizing the idea that you deserve a new vehicle, that safety and reliability require recent model years, that driving an older car means you've somehow failed. Dealerships structure their entire business around capturing you as a borrower rather than a buyer. Financing represents their profit center. Cash customers offer minimal margins. Your neighbors and colleagues drive finance vehicles, creating social proof that payments are standard. Nobody at the office mentions their car payment as a financial problem, because admitting it would be admitting they can't really afford what they're driving. Swimming against this current takes conscious effort. You have to actively reject the framing that payments are inevitable, that cash buyers are rare exceptions, that you can't get reliable transportation without signing a loan. But here's the reality underneath all the noise. The car payment is optional. It feels mandatory because everyone does it, but it isn't. More than 20% of used car purchases happen without financing. People buy cars with cash every single day. Not just wealthy people, but regular people who prioritize saving over borrowing. They drive reliable vehicles. They reach their destination safely. They get to work and haul groceries and take road trips just like everyone else. The only difference is they own their cars outright rather than making payments to someone else. You can become one of these people, not through luck or inheritance or unusually high income, but through consistent choices applied across time. Drive the current car longer. Save what you would have paid. Buy the next one with cash. Repeat until the payment cycle breaks entirely. The first iteration feels hardest because you're starting from zero and probably still making payments on something. But each cycle gets easier as your savings base grows and your relationship with vehicles transforms. Eventually, the idea of financing a car starts to feel as strange as the idea of paying cash feels now. Your transportation needs don't change, your financial trajectory does. If you're reading this with a current car payment, I'm not here to make you feel foolish. Almost everyone finances cars at some point. The system is designed to make it feel like the only option, and fighting cultural defaults takes awareness that most people never develop. But awareness is the starting point. Once you see car payments as a choice rather than an inevitability, you can start making different choices. Once you understand that normal and smart aren't synonyms, that most people follow patterns that actively work against their financial interests, you can begin constructing a different pattern for yourself. Once you recognize that the $700 you send to a lender each month could be building your future rather than someone else's, the payment starts to feel less like an obligation and more like a decision. You can decide differently. The average American will spend well over $300,000 on car payments across their lifetime. That money will leave their household never to return, transferred to lenders and dealerships and insurance companies and fuel stations. Or that money could stay. It could compound. It could become retirement security, or college funds, or a paid-off house, or the freedom to walk away from a job you hate, or the ability to help your kids start their adult lives without crushing debt. The car gets you to the same places either way. The payment is the difference. Everyone thinks car payments are normal. They're common. They're typical. They're what people around you have always done and will likely continue doing. But normal isn't the same as necessary. Common isn't the same as optimal. What everyone does isn't automatically what you should do. The path out isn't complicated. Keep the car you have, save what you can, buy the next one outright. Repeat until the cycle breaks. 3 steps, applied consistently across years, and you're free of car payments for life. The only question is whether you want that freedom more than you want to keep doing what everyone else is doing. Normal